It started with a simple sentence, one I thought was just a joke. We were at the office, Emily and I worked together, for those who don't know. And not just together. She's my boss. Yeah, I know I signed up for a complicated dynamic from day one. But despite that, we'd always kept our work and personal lives in check. At least that's what I thought. Until the day she said, right in front of our colleagues, with this snarky little smirk on her face, "You're useless. I'm taking your paycheck." Everyone laughed, thinking it was just some light banter between husband and wife. I laughed too, nervously. But deep down, it didn't sit right. Emily's always had a sharp tongue, but that one felt personal. Too personal. And the way she said it, like she meant it, chilled me. I brushed it off, though. I'd learned over the years that with Emily, if you take everything seriously, you'd lose your mind. But that comment stuck with me, burrowed in my head like a splinter. I started noticing things, small at first. She was leaving for work earlier than me, which wasn't unusual. What was strange was that she'd leave without a word, like a ghost in the morning. Normally, we'd have breakfast together, or at least exchange a few words before heading off to work. But now, nothing. Just an empty bed and a cold house. And it wasn't just at home. At the office, Emily had shifted. There was a time when we'd sneak glances at each other, share private smiles, little moments that made the mundane workday feel lighter. But now, she barely looked at me. It was like I didn't exist. One afternoon, I went to her office to talk about a project we were working on. I knocked on her door and heard her muffled voice through the wood, but something felt wrong. When I pushed the door open, she was leaning back in her chair, phone in hand, whispering into the receiver with this playful grin on her face. The kind of grin I hadn't seen directed at me in months. She looked up, her smile dropping instantly when she saw me. "Oh, it's you," she said, like I was some intern, not her husband. I tried to keep it professional, even though I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. "Just wanted to go over the figures for the Q4 report," I said, feeling like an idiot for bothering her. She waved me off with this dismissive gesture, still half engaged in her phone call. "Later, Michael." "I'm busy," she said, almost annoyed that I was interrupting. She didn't even look me in the eye, just kept tapping away on her screen, smiling at whoever was on the other end of that call. The rest of the day, I couldn't focus. I started questioning everything. Was that really just a work call? Or something more? The way she acted was too comfortable, too intimate. But it was just a call, right? Later that week, things escalated. We were supposed to meet for lunch, a rare moment where our schedules aligned. I showed up at the restaurant we agreed on, but Emily didn't. I texted her, no reply. I called her straight to voicemail. After waiting for an hour, I decided to head back to the office. That's when I saw her. She was walking out of some coffee shop, her arm linked with another guy's. He wasn't anyone I recognized from work. Tall, athletic, wearing one of those suits that look like they cost more than a month's rent. And they were too close, laughing, leaning into each other like teenagers on a date. My heart was pounding. I didn't confront her right then. I just froze, watched from a distance as she kissed him on the cheek, like she didn't have a husband at all, like we didn't exist. I turned around and left. My mind was racing. Who the hell was that? Was this just a friendly lunch or something else? My instincts screamed at me that it was more than just lunch. But still, I tried to convince myself there was an explanation. Some kind of reasonable story she'd tell me later, and we'd laugh about how paranoid I'd been. That night, she came home late, smelling like expensive wine and perfume that wasn't hers. I asked her about lunch, keeping my tone as casual as possible. "Oh, I ended up meeting a client last minute," she said, shrugging like it was nothing. She didn't even flinch when she lied. "Sorry, babe. Work's just crazy right now." I wanted to believe her, but my gut told me I was being played, that her words were just another mask, covering whatever truth she didn't want me to see. But I kept quiet. I smiled, kissed her on the forehead, and told her it was fine. But inside, I felt like I was sinking into quicksand. Whatever was happening between us, it wasn't just busy with work. Something bigger was brewing, and I was about to be right in the middle of it. After seeing Emily with that guy, I couldn't let it go. My mind was in overdrive. Every time she smiled, every time her phone buzzed and she glanced at it, My skin crawled. I wanted to ask her straight out who that guy was. But I knew Emily. If I accused her with nothing to back it up, she'd turn it around on me, make me the bad guy for not trusting her. She was good at that, twisting things, making you feel like you were crazy for even thinking something was wrong. So I played it cool, at least on the outside. But on the inside, I started digging. I didn't want to snoop through her phone or emails. I felt pathetic even thinking about it, but the thought wouldn't leave me alone. One night, when she was in the shower, I grabbed her phone off the dresser. My hands were shaking like I was doing something illegal, but when I unlocked her phone, nothing. No suspicious messages, no weird names in her contacts, no breadcrumb trail leading me to a confession. Just work emails, some group texts with her friends, and a few random Instagram DMs. It looked clean, too clean. I felt guilty, ashamed even, like I was the one crossing the line. But the image of her with that guy, laughing and touching him like they'd known each other for years, kept haunting me. I had to know. That's when I realized I'd been looking in the wrong place. Emily's always been cautious, and if she was hiding something, it wouldn't be on her phone. No, she'd be smarter than that. I started paying attention to the small things. She had this old work laptop she kept at home, tucked away in her office. I hadn't seen her use it in months, but something told me to check it out. One evening, after she left to grab drinks with some coworkers, I went for it. The laptop was password protected, but I knew her well enough to guess it after a few tries. I'm not proud of what I did, but at that point, my paranoia had eaten me alive. When I got in, the first thing I did was check her email. Same story as her phone, clean. But then I found it, a folder, titled innocuously enough, Receipts and Documents. At first, I thought it was just work-related, but the moment I opened it, my heart sank. Photos, dozens of them. Her with that same guy at some bar. Her sitting on his lap in what looked like a hotel room. Her wearing a dress I'd never seen before, leaning in for a kiss that wasn't mine. Couldn't breathe. The floor felt like it had disappeared beneath me. There was no more guessing. No more, maybe it's just a client. She was cheating, and it wasn't some one-off mistake. It looked like this had been going on for a while, and I'd been too blind to see it. I just sat there, staring at the screen, the images burning into my mind. How long had this been happening? How many lies had she told me while smiling in my face, acting like everything was normal? The worst part was, I could hear her voice in my head already, twisting this too, if I confronted her. She'd probably say it was nothing, just some work relationship that didn't mean anything. But I knew better now. I wasn't going to let her gaslight me out of this one. When she came home that night, she was all smiles. A little too friendly, like she was trying to distract me from something. We sat on the couch, and she told me about her work drinks, laughing at some stupid story about a coworker. I watched her, biting my tongue, my hands clenched into fists. Every word she said made me want to scream, but I kept quiet. I wasn't going to confront her until I knew exactly what I wanted to say, until I was ready to turn her whole world upside down like she'd done to mine. But I wasn't prepared for what she said next. She leaned in, resting her hand on my shoulder, and whispered, "I've been thinking, we should take a break." I just stared at her, stunned. "What do you mean, a break?" She smiled, this calm, patronizing smile like she was talking to a child. "You've been distant lately, Michael. I think we need some space to figure things out." I could have laughed if I wasn't so furious. I had been distant. She had the audacity to turn this on me, as if I was the problem. "Space?" I repeated, my voice barely hiding the anger bubbling up inside me. She nodded, as if she genuinely believed she was being reasonable. "Yeah, I just think some time apart would be good for us. Clear our heads." I could feel my pulse in my ears. I wanted to throw everything in her face right then. The pictures, the lies, the cheating. But I stopped myself. Something about her calmness, the way she was so sure of herself, made me pause. She was playing a game, and I wasn't about to let her win. Not yet. So I took a deep breath, smiled, and said, "Sure, if that's what you want." She looked surprised, like she didn't expect me to agree so easily. But she nodded, satisfied. "Yeah, it'll be good for both of us." Little did she know I wasn't giving her space. I was about to tear down the life she thought she'd built without me noticing. It wasn't just about our marriage anymore. It was about exposing the real Emily, and I was about to make sure she didn't see it coming. After Emily dropped the break bomb on me, I knew I had to play it smart. She was up to something, and I wasn't about to let her slither out of this without consequences. I had the photos, the proof, but I wasn't ready to show my hand yet. Not when she still thought she had the upper hand. The next few days were a bizarre mix of fake normalcy and tension so thick, I could cut it with a knife. Emily acted like nothing had changed, like we weren't on the verge of collapse. She'd still ask me if I wanted dinner, still give me those fake, practice smiles. But now, every time she touched her phone or went out for drinks with her coworkers, I knew exactly what she was doing, and it made me sick. I wasn't just going to sit back and let her do this. No way. If she wanted a break, I'd give her something to think about. So I started planning. If she wanted to play games, I'd show her I could play better. That weekend, she told me she was going out of town for a business conference. Said she'd be gone for a few days, some networking thing. She even had the nerve to kiss me on the cheek as she packed her bag. Like she was the perfect wife. I knew exactly where she was going and who she was going with. This conference was just another one of her little vacations with that suit-wearing idiot. But I didn't say a word. I watched her leave, pretending like I didn't know. The moment she walked out that door, I went into action. First, I called my buddy, Jeff. Jeff's one of those guys you want on your side in a crisis. He's blunt, no nonsense, and has a way of seeing things clearly when you're too emotionally messed up to think straight. I needed that right now. When I told him what was happening, he wasn't surprised. "Dude, I've been telling you for years she's got a cold streak," he said, not bothering to sugarcoat it. "But if you're finally ready to get rid of her, you need a plan." And that's exactly what we did. Jeff and I spent hours figuring out the best way to hit her where it hurt. I wasn't just thinking about the emotional side anymore. This was about taking control of my life, my dignity, and, frankly, my finances. Emily wasn't just my wife, she was also my boss. We worked at the same company, and she had more pull than I did. She controlled a lot of things, including my paycheck. That's why her comment in the office, "The whole you're useless, I'm taking your paycheck," hit harder than just a joke. It was a threat, and I wasn't going to let her take anything else from me. Jeff suggested something bold, something that took me a second to fully process. "Why don't you quit? Blindside her. Take her power away before she even knows what's happening." I paused, not sure if I had the guts to do something that drastic. But the more I thought about it, the more sense it made. Emily's biggest hold over me wasn't just our marriage. It was that she had the upper hand at work. If I took that away, she'd lose control. And I knew Emily. She hated not being in control. So, the next day I went into the office. Emily was still away on business, so I didn't have to deal with her. I drafted my resignation letter, making it as professional as possible. No drama, no emotion, just cold, hard facts. I walked it straight to HR, handed it in, and that was it. I was officially out. But I wasn't done. That evening, I texted Emily. I kept it short. "We need to talk when you get back." She replied quickly, all casual, like she had nothing to worry about. "Of course. Everything okay?" I didn't respond. Let her sweat it out a bit. The real kicker came when she returned from her conference. I made sure to be at home, acting like I didn't have a care in the world. She came in, dragging her suitcase behind her, looking slightly more tan, probably from lounging around at some hotel pool while I sat here stewing. She flashed me a quick smile. "Hey, babe, miss me?" she asked, as if nothing had changed. "Yeah, I bet," I replied, my tone flat. She raised an eyebrow, sensing the shift in my mood, but clearly not expecting what was coming next. "What's up? You seemed weird in your text." I stared at her for a moment, then pulled up my phone. I kept the pictures, the ones I found on her laptop. I pulled one up, a nice clear one of her and her little secret man, all cozy in that hotel room. I slid the phone across the table toward her. Her face went white the second she saw it. The confident smirk she always wore around me melted away in an instant. "What the hell is this?" she stammered, her voice wavering for the first time in months. "You tell me," I said, keeping my voice steady calm. "Looks like your business trip involved more than just networking." Her eyes darted between the phone and me, her mind racing to come up with some kind of excuse, some explanation. I could see it. She was scrambling. This is ridiculous, Michael. This isn't what it looks like. You're overreacting. Overreacting. I almost laughed. Emily, it's a photo of you in a hotel room with another guy. What exactly am I overreacting to? She stood there, caught. Her face hardened. So what? You're gonna throw away everything because of some photos? You don't even know the whole story. Then why don't you tell me the whole story? I said, my voice sharp now. Tell me why you've been lying to me for months. Why you've been sneaking around with this guy. She crossed her arms, her usual tactic when she was about to go on the defensive. I've been unhappy, Michael. You don't understand what it's like being in a relationship with you. You're weak. You don't challenge me. You just exist. I needed something else. Something more. Her words hit like a punch to the gut. She wasn't even trying to deny it anymore. She was just throwing it in my face. Like her betrayal was my fault. And you think that justifies cheating? I said, my voice rising despite myself. You think because you're unhappy, it's okay to lie to my face every day? To drag me through this without even giving me a chance to fix things? She didn't flinch. Fix things? Michael, you can't fix something that's been broken for years. We've been over for a long time. I'm just the only one who had the guts to admit it. I stared at her, feeling a mix of rage, disbelief, and something else. Something worse. Defeat. That's fine, I said, my voice quieter now, because I quit. The job, the marriage, all of it. I'm done. Her eyes widened. What do you mean, you quit? I handed in my resignation. You don't control me anymore, Emily. You don't get to treat me like a pawn in your little game. She stood there, stunned, speechless for the first time, and it felt good, real good. I grabbed my keys, walked out the door, and ignored the buzzing of my phone as she tried to call me back. For once, I was in control. I didn't look back when I left the house that night. My mind was spinning, my chest tight, but somehow I felt lighter. For the first time in years, I wasn't tangled in Emily's web of manipulation and lies. I drove aimlessly for hours, not sure where to go or what to do. I ended up at Jeff's place. He opened the door, took one look at me, and knew something had gone down. She knows, I said, walking past him and collapsing onto his couch. Jeff raised an eyebrow, leaning against the doorframe. So, how'd it go? I laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. She didn't even deny it. She had the nerve to act like it was my fault, like I was the reason she was sneaking around behind my back. Man, she's a piece of work, Jeff muttered, shaking his head. But hey, at least you're free now. You quit, right? Yeah, I told her everything. Walked out before she could pull any more of her crap. Good, he said, clapping me on the back. About time you cut that dead weight. You deserve better than that. I nodded, even though my heart was still racing. The high of the confrontation was wearing off, and now reality was sinking in. What was I supposed to do now? I had no job, no wife, no plan. Just the empty shell of what my life used to be. I sat there in silence for a while, staring at the ceiling, wondering how everything had fallen apart so fast. The next morning, I woke up to a barrage of missed calls and texts from Emily. I hadn't expected anything less, but still, seeing her name on my phone screen felt like a punch to the gut. The text started off civil. We need to talk. Please call me back. But as I ignored them, they quickly turned aggressive. Are you seriously going to run away like a child? You're really going to throw everything away over this? And then the bombshell. If you don't answer, I'm coming to Jeff's. We're not done. I showed Jeff the messages, and he shook his head. She's not going to stop, is she? Nope. I sighed, tossing my phone onto the table. She's always been like this. She can't stand not being in control. The second she feels like she's losing, she goes nuclear. Sure enough, not even an hour later, there was a knock on the door. I didn't even have to check. I knew it was her. Jeff opened it, and there she was, standing in the doorway, looking furious. We need to talk, she said, her voice low but firm. Jeff looked at me and I nodded. I wasn't going to hide from this. Not anymore. I walked over, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. What do you want, Emily? She stepped inside, her eyes locked on mine. I want to know why you're doing this. Why you're throwing away everything we built over some misunderstanding. I couldn't help but laugh. Misunderstanding? You think this is just a misunderstanding? I have pictures, Emily. I saw you with him. She rolled her eyes, as if I was the one being irrational. I already told you, it's not what it looks like. He's just someone I met through work, and things got complicated. But it didn't mean anything. There it is, I said, shaking my head. The classic, it didn't mean anything. Do you even hear yourself? Do you think I'm stupid? No, Michael, I don't think you're stupid, she said, her voice softening, as if she was trying to calm me down. I just think you're overreacting. We've been under a lot of pressure lately, and maybe I made some bad decisions. But that doesn't mean we should throw everything away. I stared at her, disbelief washing over me. She wasn't even trying to own up to it. She was spinning her lies again, weaving a new story to try and make me doubt myself. I already threw it away, I said, my voice steady. I quit. I'm done with the job and I'm done with you. You can have him or whatever it is you want, but I'm not sticking around to play this game anymore. Her expression shifted. Gone was the soft, pleading tone. Now she was angry. You quit? Are you serious? Do you have any idea how stupid that was? You don't just walk away from everything because of some little mistake. I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my cool. A little mistake? You've been lying to me for months, Emily. Cheating. Sneaking around. You don't get to call that a little mistake. Michael, don't be dramatic, she snapped. You know I've been carrying the weight of our lives for years now. You're stuck. You have no ambition, no drive. I had to find something else, something more than this stale, dead-end marriage. But I was still here, wasn't I? I was still trying to make it work, even when you weren't enough. That hit me like a freight train. I knew she had a way of cutting deep, but this was something else. I stood there, stunned for a moment, her words sinking in. I wasn't enough? I finally said, my voice shaking. You think cheating on me makes you the victim? That I wasn't enough because I wasn't climbing some corporate ladder fast enough for you. She didn't respond. Her silence said everything. I quit because I'm done playing your game, Emily. I continued, my voice firm. You used me. You lied to me. You took everything from me, and now you're mad because you don't get to control me anymore. Well, I'm not going to let you make me feel like a failure because I wasn't living up to your ridiculous standards. Her face hardened again, that cold, calculating expression returning. Fine, if that's what you want, Michael. If you want to walk away from everything, from me, then don't expect any sympathy when you fall flat on your face. You'll be crawling back, and by then it'll be too late. I stared at her, not even angry anymore, just tired, exhausted, really. I won't be crawling back, Emily. Not this time. She turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Jeff was standing in the corner, arms crossed, watching the whole thing. He let out a low whistle. Damn, man. She really went for the jugular, didn't she? I nodded, sinking back onto the couch, feeling the weight of everything crashing down on me. I had stood my ground, but it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like I just lost everything I thought I had. My marriage, my career, my future. But there was something else, too. Beneath the pain, beneath the exhaustion, there was a strange sense of relief. I wasn't under her thumb anymore. I wasn't tied to her lies. For the first time in years, I was free. And that scared the hell out of me that I in the days after Emily stormed out. Everything hit me all at once. The initial rush of standing my ground, of finally breaking free from her, faded fast, and what came next was just empty. The house was quiet, too quiet. I hadn't realized how much of my life was tangled up with her, even in the smallest ways. Her shoes by the door, the sound of her typing late at night, even the scent of her perfume lingering on the couch. All of it was gone, and with it, the life I thought I had. But it wasn't just emotional, it was practical, too. Quit my job. That was the reality sinking in hard. Emily and I had worked together for years, and I knew the company inside and out, but I also knew she'd turn the place against me in no time. She had the connections, the power. And me? I was just another guy out of work, trying to figure out my next move. Jeff tried to keep my spirits up, but I could tell he was worried too. Look, man, it's going to be rough for a bit, but you did the right thing. You can't stay stuck under her. This is your chance to figure out what you want. The problem was, I didn't know what I wanted. My career had been tied to hers for so long. I'd lost sight of who I was outside of being Emily's husband or her employee. But sitting around moping wasn't going to get me anywhere, so I started job hunting. Anything to get my mind off the train wreck that was my personal life. While I sent out resumes, the texts from Emily kept coming. They were fewer now, less angry, more strategic. It was like she'd moved into a different phase of her attack. She wasn't trying to fight me outright anymore. Now she was trying to lure me back. We should talk. I'm sorry things got so heated. Maybe we can figure out a way to work through this. It doesn't have to be the end. Michael, you know you'll never find someone who understands you the way I do. That last one made me laugh, bitterly. It was classic Emily, when all else failed, play the card that no one else would put up with me. She always had this way of making me feel like I was lucky just to have her, even when she was the one tearing me apart. But I wasn't falling for it. Not anymore. I ignored the messages, deleted them without responding. It was easier that way. But that didn't mean I wasn't struggling. One night, about 2 weeks after she left, I was lying on the couch in Jeff's living room, staring at the ceiling, when my phone rang. It wasn't Emily this time, it was my mom. "Michael," she said, her voice soft but with that edge that told me she knew something was wrong. "We need to talk. I've been hearing things." "Mom, it's fine," I said, already dreading where this conversation was going. "It's not fine," she continued. "I know you and Emily are going through something, but you can't just shut everyone out. Your sister called me, said she saw something on Facebook. People are talking, Michael." That made me sit up. Facebook? What the hell was she talking about? "I don't know what you're hearing, but it's just messy," I replied, trying to downplay it. "Messy? Michael, she's posting pictures with another man. There's a whole thread about it." I didn't want to believe it, but then I saw them myself. She's flaunting it, like nothing ever happened between the two of you. I felt a cold wave of nausea wash over me. "What pictures?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Emily had moved on, and she wasn't even bothering to hide it anymore. "I'm sending them to you," my mom said, her voice tight with concern. "I'm worried about you. You need to talk to someone. This is too much for you to handle alone." I hung up and stared at my phone, waiting for the pictures to come through. When they did, I felt my stomach drop. There she was, Emily, laughing in some fancy restaurant, her hand resting on the shoulder of that same guy. They were all over each other. Couldn't breathe. The captions were the worst. She wasn't even subtle about it. Comments like "finally living my best life" and "deserved a real man" were all over the post. People were commenting, some mutual friends even cheering her on, congratulating her for breaking free, or making jokes about how she'd upgraded. My hands shook as I scrolled through the comments, each one feeling like a stab to the gut. It wasn't just the betrayal anymore. It was the humiliation. She wasn't just cheating. She was broadcasting it, flaunting her new life like I was some kind of embarrassing footnote in her past. I threw my phone across the room, hearing it slam into the wall, but I didn't care. The rage, the pain, the sheer unfairness of it all boiled over inside me. She'd ruined everything. Our marriage, my job, and now my reputation. And she was enjoying it. Jeff came in, seeing me sitting there, shaking. "What happened?" "She's posting it all over social media," I said through clenched teeth. "Like I'm nothing. Like I never even mattered." He shook his head, his face hardening. "She's trying to get under your skin, man. She knows this'll hurt you, and she wants a reaction. Don't give her that satisfaction." "I don't know how to not react," I said, my voice barely steady. "She's ripping me apart, and she's acting like it's the best thing that's ever happened to her." Jeff sat down next to me. "Look, I'm not gonna lie, it's gonna get worse before it gets better. She's gonna keep pushing, keep flaunting it. But that's because she knows she's losing control over you. You're not crawling back, and that's driving her crazy. You have to hold the line, Michael. Don't let her win this." I took a deep breath, trying to let his words sink in. But it was hard, really hard. Emily had been part of my life for so long, and now she was trying to erase me, to rewrite the narrative like I never mattered. Like I was just a stepping stone to her real happiness. "I don't know how to get past this," I admitted quietly. It's like every part of my life is tied to her, and now it's all gone. You build something new, Jeff said, his voice steady. It's gonna suck for a while, but you rebuild. You find out who you are without her. And trust me, man, when you come out the other side of this, you're gonna be stronger than you've ever been. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But sitting there, in the wreckage of everything I thought my life was, I wasn't sure how I'd ever put the pieces back together. But one thing was for sure. I wasn't going to let Emily destroy me. Not completely. Not anymore. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those photos of Emily plastered all over social media. Her smug face, her hand on that guy like he was some prize she'd won. It gnawed at me, this slow-burning anger that kept bubbling up every time I tried to push it down. Jeff had said not to give her the satisfaction of reacting, but it was easier said than done. She wanted me to break. I could feel it. She was baiting me, trying to draw me into some public meltdown where she could paint me as the bitter, pathetic ex. That's what this was all about, control. She couldn't control me at work anymore. She couldn't manipulate me in our marriage. So now she was playing the only card she had left. Humiliation. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I had to do something. I couldn't just sit here and let her rewrite the story of our marriage like I was the villain. She had no right, but I couldn't let my emotions control me. If I was going to fight back, I had to do it smart. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to engage with her online. I wasn't going to sink to her level and throw petty insults or respond to her posts. That's what she wanted. Instead, I was going to hit her where it really hurt, her ego. I called up a lawyer. I didn't know much about divorce law, but I knew enough to understand that I needed someone on my side who could fight dirty if needed. Emily had the upper hand financially. She made more money, she had more connections, and she probably thought she could steamroll me in court. But I wasn't going to let her take everything. Not without a fight. The lawyer, Karen, was sharp. The kind of person who could see 10 steps ahead in a chess match. When I laid everything out, our shared finances, our house, the fact that Emily was my boss, she didn't flinch. You have more leverage than you think, Karen said, after I explained the situation. The fact that she's posting about her affair online is a gift. Really. It paints a very clear picture of her behavior, and that can work in your favor when it comes to dividing assets. I nodded, absorbing her words, but part of me still felt uneasy. What about my job? I asked. I quit, but she still has influence at the company. I don't want her poisoning the well for me. Karen smiled, a glint of something sharp in her eyes. We'll make sure that's covered too. She's going to have a hard time explaining why she's dragging your name through the mud while you're keeping quiet. We'll make sure you walk away with what's fair, and maybe more. It was the first time in weeks that I felt like I wasn't completely powerless. Karen set up a strategy to go after a fair settlement, focusing on the fact that Emily's behavior could be seen as damaging to our marriage and my future employment. She advised me to stay quiet, let Emily keep digging her own grave with her public displays, and be ready to strike when the time was right. But even with a solid legal plan, I couldn't shake the anger gnawing at me. Emily had gotten away with too much already, and I wanted her to feel it. She thought she was untouchable, but I knew her better than anyone. I knew what she valued most, her image, her reputation, the illusion of being the perfect, successful woman who had it all together. And that's where I was going to hit her. Later that week, I put my own plan into action. I started by reaching out to some old friends, people Emily didn't think I was still in contact with, people from our earlier days, before she'd started climbing the corporate ladder and distancing herself from anyone she thought was beneath her. I'd always been more down to earth, and while Emily had outgrown those relationships, I hadn't. One of those people was a guy named Daniel, an old friend from college who worked in PR. He owed me a favor, and I knew exactly how to cash it in. Daniel and I grabbed drinks, and I laid it all out for him. The affair, the social media posts, the way she was parading her new life around like she was some kind of hero. Daniel didn't need much convincing. He'd never liked Emily, thought she was a narcissist who used people for her own gain. When I told him what she was doing now, he grinned. "So, you want to tarnish the Golden Girl's image?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "More like show people who she really is," I replied. "I don't want to drag her through the mud. I just want the truth out there. She's built this whole life on lies, and I'm done playing the role of her silent victim." Daniel nodded, taking a sip of his beer. I can work with that. Give me some time and I'll get the ball rolling. Just make sure you don't react publicly. Let the story come to you. And that's exactly what I did. Over the next few weeks, Daniel quietly leaked bits of information. Nothing too scandalous, just enough to raise eyebrows. He started with the facts about our work situation, highlighting how Emily had climbed her way to the top while treating the people around her like stepping stones. Then, he hinted at the affair, framing it as an open secret that she was flaunting while still technically married. It wasn't slander. It was the truth, laid out in a way that made people see her for who she really was. It didn't take long for the gossip to spread. Emily had a lot of admirers, but she also had plenty of enemies. People who'd been waiting for a crack in her perfect facade. And once that crack appeared, they were more than happy to help widen it. The tipping point came when someone from our old company anonymously posted a detailed account of how Emily had manipulated her way into a leadership position, using her relationship with me as leverage. The post went viral within our industry, and suddenly people were talking. Whispers turned into full-blown rumors, and Emily's reputation, so carefully crafted over the years, began to crumble. I wasn't gloating. I wasn't celebrating her downfall. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel good to finally see the scales tip in my favor for once. For so long, she'd held all the power, and now she was scrambling. A few days later, I got a call from her. She sounded different, less sure of herself, less smug. "Michael, we need to talk," she said, her voice strained. I leaned back in my chair, taking a deep breath. "About what?" "I know what you're doing," she snapped, but there was no real anger behind it. She was desperate now. "I know you've been spreading rumors about me, making me look bad. This needs to stop." I could hear the panic in her voice, and for the first time it didn't affect me. I didn't feel like I was drowning anymore. "I haven't spread anything that isn't true, Emily," I said, my voice calm, measured. "People are just seeing the real you for the first time." She was silent for a moment, and when she spoke again, her tone had softened. "I don't want to keep fighting like this. We can still work something out, you know? It doesn't have to be ugly." "Funny," I said. "I wasn't the one who made it ugly. You did that on your own." There was a long pause on the other end, and for a moment I thought she might hang up. But instead, she sighed. "You really want to destroy me, don't you?" I thought about it. Thought about everything she'd done, the lies, the manipulation, the way she tried to paint herself as the victim while tearing me down. "I don't need to destroy you, Emily," I finally said. "You're doing that yourself." And with that, I hung up, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was just done. Done with her, done with the games, done with everything that had tied me to that toxic, draining life. For the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. After that last call, something shifted inside me. The anger, the bitterness, the gnawing need for revenge. It started to fade. I'd spent so long trying to get even, to level the playing field, but now I realized something. It wasn't about winning anymore. It was about moving on. Emily had been a storm in my life, one that had destroyed everything in its path, but the storm was finally passing. And in its wake, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Clarity. Over the next few weeks, I focused on rebuilding, both my life and myself. Jeff was a constant support, reminding me to stay focused, not to get pulled back into Emily's chaos. My lawyer, Karen, was handling the divorce, and every update I got from her was more good news. Thanks to the public mess Emily had made of herself, Karen was able to negotiate a settlement that was far better than I'd ever expected. I'd keep the house, and there'd be no alimony or long, drawn-out court battles. Emily didn't want to fight anymore. She couldn't. Her reputation was too damaged to survive another blow. It was a strange feeling, watching the pieces fall into place. After months of uncertainty, fear, and anger, I was finally seeing a future that didn't include her. But even as I moved forward, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still unfinished. One evening, I was sitting on the back porch, staring out at the yard, when my phone buzzed. I glanced at it, expecting another update from Karen or a text from Jeff. But it wasn't either of them. It was Emily. The message was simple, but it hit me like a punch to the gut. "Can we meet? One last time." I stared at the screen, unsure of what to do. Every instinct told me to ignore it, to let her fade into the past where she belonged. But something about the message felt different. It wasn't like the others. No manipulation, no thinly veiled insults, no accusations. Just a simple request. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I sat there, weighing my options. Part of me wanted to refuse. What could she possibly say now that would make a difference? But another part of me, the part that needed real closure, decided to give her this one last chance. I agreed to meet her at a cafe near our old office. It was a place we used to go to together when things were still good between us, back when I still believed in the version of Emily I thought I knew. When I arrived, she was already sitting at a table in the back. She looked different, tired. Her usual confidence, that sharp, cutting edge, was gone. She glanced up when I approached, offering a weak smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Thanks for coming," she said softly, gesturing for me to sit. I sat down, keeping my distance, unsure of what to expect. For a moment, we just sat there in silence, the awkwardness between us heavy and suffocating. Finally, she spoke. "I know I've been awful. I'm not going to make excuses for what I did. I just wanted to talk. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to understand something." I stayed silent, letting her continue. "I didn't plan for any of this to happen," she said, her voice shaky. "I thought I had everything under control. I thought I could juggle it all, work, our marriage, the other stuff. But somewhere along the way, I lost myself. I made mistakes, Michael, huge ones. And I know that now. It wasn't just the affair. It was everything. The way I treated you, the way I used you." I watched her carefully, searching for any signs of manipulation, any hints that she was trying to play me again. But for once, she seemed genuine, raw even. "I was so caught up in being perfect," she continued, "in having the perfect life, the perfect career, the perfect marriage. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you, how much I was losing myself in all of it. And when things started to fall apart, I lashed out. I blamed you because it was easier than facing what I had become." I leaned back in my chair, still wary, but her words were hitting something inside me that I hadn't expected. I wasn't ready to forgive her. Maybe I never would be. But hearing her admit it, hearing her acknowledge the damage she'd caused, it was something. "I'm not asking for anything," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't want you to hate me. I know I ruined everything, but I don't want that to be the end of us. I don't want my mistakes to define how you remember our time together." I took a deep breath, the weight of her words sinking in. "Emily," I said slowly, "it's not just about the affair. It's not just about the lies. You didn't just ruin our marriage. You tore down everything that made me believe in us. You made me feel like I wasn't enough, like I was just some stepping stone in your life." She flinched, her eyes filling with regret. "I know," she whispered. "I know I did. And I'm so sorry." I didn't say anything for a long moment, letting the silence settle between us. Part of me wanted to lash out, to make her feel the pain I'd carried for so long. But another part of me, the part that was tired of being angry, just wanted to let go. "I don't hate you, Emily," I finally said. "But I'm done. I'm done with the lies, the manipulation, the games. I don't want you in my life anymore. This is the last time we'll meet like this." She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes, but she didn't fight it. For once, she didn't try to argue or turn things around. She just accepted it. "I understand," she said softly, wiping away a tear. "I really do." We sat there for a few more minutes, the weight of everything we'd been through hanging in the air. Then, without another word, I stood up. I walked out of the cafe, leaving Emily behind, along with everything she'd put me through. It was over. As I stepped outside, the cool evening air hit my face, and for the first time in what felt like years, I felt free. Not just from her, but from the anger, the hurt, the bitterness that had consumed me. I'd gotten the closure I didn't even know I needed. It wasn't a victory. It wasn't some triumphant moment where I walked away with my head held high. It was just peace, and maybe that was enough. Walking out of that cafe, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, like a huge weight had finally lifted off my shoulders. It wasn't that everything was magically better, or that all the pain from the past few months was gone. But something shifted. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't looking backward. I wasn't holding onto the anger, the betrayal, or the bitterness. I was just free. Life after Emily was strange at first. It was like learning how to breathe again, but in a different atmosphere. The silence in the house didn't feel suffocating anymore. It felt like space. I found myself enjoying the little things I hadn't noticed in years. Mornings with no rush, evenings spent with Jeff just talking or watching some random game on TV. I started going for runs, something I used to love before everything got so complicated. It cleared my head, helped me process the wreckage Emily had left behind. I threw myself into finding a new job, something separate from everything we had built together. It wasn't easy, starting over never is, but it felt like a clean slate, and that was exactly what I needed. I didn't want to be tied to the past anymore, to the company we shared, or the identity of Emily's husband. I wanted to build something that was mine, and slowly things began to fall into place. I got a position at a smaller firm, nothing flashy, nothing that would make headlines, but it was solid. The people were down to earth, and best of all, there was no shadow of Emily looming over me. It was a fresh start, and that was more valuable than any paycheck. Every now and then, I'd hear whispers about Emily. Mutual friends who hadn't completely severed ties would mention her in passing. I'd see posts on social media, not from her directly. She'd gone quiet after the whole PR mess, but from people who were still in her orbit. It seemed like her life was still spinning, but not in the direction she'd planned. She'd moved on with that guy, the one from the pictures, but from what I heard, it wasn't the perfect romance she'd made it out to be. I didn't find joy in that, though. It didn't matter anymore. Her life wasn't my concern. What did matter was how I was rebuilding myself. I was slowly piecing together a life that didn't revolve around her. And in the process, I started reconnecting with people I'd drifted away from. Friends, family, even old coworkers. I realized how much I'd isolated myself in that marriage, how much I'd let Emily dictate not just our relationship, but every aspect of my world. I was done living like that. One afternoon, a few months after everything had settled, I got a call from my sister, Sarah. She'd been one of the few people who'd been there for me throughout the whole ordeal, even when I tried to push her away. "Hey, I'm in town. Want to grab lunch?" she asked. We met at a small diner, one of those places we used to go to as kids. It was simple, unpretentious, exactly what I needed. "You seem different," she said after we'd ordered. "Lighter. I'm not used to seeing you like this." "I feel different," I replied, sipping my coffee. "It's been a rough few months, but I think I'm finally moving on." She smiled. "Good. You deserve to be happy, Michael. You always did." I nodded, feeling a warmth in her words. For so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like to just be okay, to not have to constantly look over my shoulder, wondering what kind of lie I'd be fed next. As we talked, Sarah brought up something I hadn't considered. "Are you ready to start dating again?" The question caught me off guard. Dating? I hadn't even thought about it. The idea of opening myself up to someone new felt both terrifying and oddly exciting. "I don't know," I admitted. I haven't really thought about it. After everything with Emily, I'm not sure I'm ready to trust someone again." She nodded, understanding. "It'll take time, but don't let her ruin that for you. Don't let what she did make you afraid to connect with someone else." Her words stayed with me after that lunch. I wasn't sure when I'd be ready, but for the first time, I was open to the idea of finding someone new. Not as a replacement for what I'd lost, but as a way to start fresh, with someone who didn't come with all the baggage and pain that Emily had left behind. Weeks turned into months, and life started to feel normal again. Work was steady, friendships were strong, and the house, my house now, felt like home. I wasn't constantly thinking about Emily anymore. Sure, she crossed my mind from time to time, but it wasn't with anger or bitterness. It was just a chapter that had closed. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from an old college friend, someone I hadn't heard from in years. She was in town and wanted to catch up. I stared at the message for a moment, thinking about everything that had led me to this point. The pain, the betrayal, the chaos that had ripped through my life, but also the healing, the rebuilding, the slow, steady steps toward a future I hadn't thought was possible. I smiled, typing back a quick response. Sure, I'd love to catch up. It wasn't much, just a simple message. But it felt like the start of something new, something better. Emily was a part of my past, a painful one, but she didn't own my future. That was mine to build one step at a time. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to move forward without her.